Hi there, and welcome to Heard Online, an investigative series when we look at claims made about sleep and health on the World Wide Web to see if they're true or not. And today, again, my heart is breaking because this is so sad. There is an incredible admission in the paper we're going to look at that shows us how the authors of the study we're going to investigate had an opportunity to reassure millions of peoples out there, but chose a different path. And I understand why, and we're going to talk about that later. But my heart really breaks when I see this, is see what's happening, what's going on. You may have came across articles, studies lately where there's been this claim that sleeping less than 5 hours per night increases your risk of getting multimorbidity, like multiple conditions. And in fact, this is the first time when 3 people independently of each other sent me this link. So we're going to look at something that I think is really, really relevant and valuable. But I want to say this before we get started, that if you don't have time to watch this entire episode, then please skip ahead to the part where I talk about accelerometer data and objective sleep measures, because that's the part when I went like, wow, oh my goodness, oh my gosh, I could hardly believe it. But anyway, let's get started here. This particular CNN article was sent to me by Veronica, one of our coaches, but 2 other people sent me links to articles. I think were from different news outlets, but they were all referring to the same study that we're going to look at. But this one from CNN says people who sleep 5 hours or less at night face high risk of multiple health problems as the age study finds. Fairly triggering title. I would give it maybe 4 on our triggerometer. But again, what we really want to look at is not this, because this is sort of like, if you remember, we did that episode where I talked about the game of telephone, where a media just hears something from academia and kind of like often distorts it in a way that it's even more alarming and triggering than the original scientific study behind it. So what we really want to do is look at the original like scientific study that where these headlines come from and these studies come from. So without further ado, we will do just that. We'll take a quick look at the actual study, and then I'm going to sort of break it down. So this is the one. It is from PLOS Medicine. I'm not quite familiar with this article or this paper, this journal, I should say. But here's the title: Association of Sleep Duration at age 50, 60, and 70 years with the risk of multimorbidity in the UK 24-year follow-up of the Whitehall 2 cohort study. Very nice title, I would say. Nothing triggering about that whatsoever. I'd give it really a 0 on the triggerometer. It's a very nice title. And we're going to go back and look at this, some of the some of the data from this screen, from this paper. But I've summarized it to make it easier. So basically what happened was this. So what these researchers did, what they looked at data from a cohort. It's called the Whitehall, I guess it's Whitehall 2 cohort maybe. But anyway, I'm just going to call it the Whitehall cohort. And this was started in 1985 and ran to 2016. So for 31 years, these participants had their health checked every 4 to 5 years. I believe it's a questionnaire. Like they were asked if they had any of a number of conditions, and I'm sure there were many measurements as in addition to asking about sleep and asking about their health. And there are many of these cohorts in the world, and the idea is basically to gather longitudinal data over time and try to figure out if this causes that and what's going on. And I think the idea is quite logical. But that's kind of where all the data came from. And in this cohort, they asked every 4 or 5 years or so, how many hours of sleep do you have on an average weeknight? That's their with their sleep duration primarily comes from. What we'll see is that they actually in 2012 also included objective data, not just estimates, and that's going to be really, really interesting and heartbreaking at the same time. Anyway, the response categories were less than 5 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours, and over 9 hours. So these were kind of the boxes you could tick when you were asked how much you sleep. And what they looked here what they looked at here was not like, is there a risk of, heart disease higher depending on how long you sleep, or is the risk of diabetes higher or something like that, but what they call multimorbidity. And so they define multimorbidity as the presence of 2 or more chronic diseases out of a pre-designed list of 13 chronic diseases. And this included these 13 things: diabetes, cancer, liver disease, et cetera, et cetera. And you may wonder, like, why did they choose to look at multimorbidity instead of like these conditions themselves? I don't know, but I know that there is indeed plenty of studies that have looked at, let's say, heart disease, and they have not shown any causality. They've shown the same thing as is always shown when you look at sleep duration, estimated sleep duration, and any health outcome, which is that, well, any health outcome. They're sure there are outliers too, but generally speaking, when somebody looks at a health outcome and estimated sleep duration, they find this U-shaped, curve, that people who estimate sleeping, let's say, less than 5 hours, and people who estimate sleeping more than 9 hours, like they tend to also have more health issues. And I've said this so many times that I think that is so not surprising whatsoever, right? Because if you have a health problem, do we think that's going to lead to a place where you have like peaceful sleep, you sleep about, as much as, most people sleep? Or do we think that health issues can cause us to have fragmented sleep, poor sleep, and estimate sleeping less, as well as us feeling tired and sleepy and estimate sleeping more? Well, I think there's no surprise whatsoever of these findings. But what I'm thinking is maybe these authors, maybe they didn't find anything when they looked individually at these health conditions, and maybe they decided, oh, we have to do something new. Let's pick multimorbidity and see if we can find something there. I don't know, but anyway, they chose multimorbidity as what they wanted to look at. And basically, they were trying to see, like, okay, if somebody who doesn't have multimorbidity at age 50 or 60 or 70 and sleeps little or a lot, is this associated with getting 2 or more chronic diseases? Like, prospectively, like if somebody has no multimorbidity at age 50 and then develops multimorbidity within a number of years, is that associated with them sleeping a lot or a little? So this is what they were, this is kind of the question. Okay, so now we're going to go to the results. So what did they find? Well, they found the following: the risk of multimorbidity was higher in participants with a sleep duration of less than 5 hours, 6 hours, and over 9 hours, as compared to sleep duration of 7 hours, irrespective of the age of measurement of sleep. So what they found here in this part of the results shows that they found the same thing that we always find, the same exact thing, that people who think that I sleep a little, or I think that I sleep a lot, they also were more likely to develop some health conditions. And then now the question here becomes, okay, so how do we interpret this, which I already talked a little bit about before. But do we now think that people who estimate sleeping 7 or 8 hours, they actually did sleep that amount, they were accurate, and sleeping this amount somehow protected them from developing multimorbidity? But if we think that, why would both sleeping too little and too much create the same multimorbidity? Like, if something causes, like if a lot of something and a little of something causes this, then what, that just, to me, just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And so if we, like, the headline from CNN, it's and other news that, like, they always highlight like little sleep is linked to this, because that's triggering. It's triggering because a lot of us have trouble sleeping and we think we're not sleeping enough, right? So that draws our attention. But if people are trying to tell us that, oh, sleeping little causes this, then why is it that sleeping a lot does the same? That I think is something really to ponder. Now, can we look at it in a different way? Do we think that people who estimated sleeping little or a lot maybe already had some health issue? They maybe had one chronic health issue, right? But they didn't have multimorbidity yet, but he had some health issue that affected their sleep, right? Or rather affected their estimate of their sleep. And then they developed a second, chronic condition, and now they had multimorbidity, right? And in fact, the authors themselves point out this very problem in the limitations. In the limitations of the study, the authors say that they mention the self-reported nature of the sleep data as a limitation, which is a very valid limitation, and we'll see much more on that to follow. And then say the potential for reverse causality that could arise from undiagnosed conditions at sleep measures. Exactly, right? They say that at baseline, they intended to look at people who at 50, 60, or 70 years of age didn't have multimorbidity, but at baseline, they may already actually have undiagnosed multimorbidity, or they have single morbidity or something like that. And that affects the whole, the whole data set, because then, there's this kind of reverse causality thing. Like, okay, it's not that little sleep or a lot of sleep causes this, but rather when we have health issues, it affects how we estimate our sleep, which to me makes so much more sense. All right. Now, so far, if this was if we didn't have any other data from the study, I would have concluded here and said that this is just another study that shows the same thing we've already seen. Like, there's nothing new here, but there actually is something new here. The question becomes like, how about non-self-reported sleep data? What would that show? Because the authors point out that the self-reported nature of sleep, the sleep data was a problem. So how about if we had non-self-reported sleep data? And turns out that they had that. They say accelerometer data, which is the same type of thing we use in our Fitbit. It's movement, like it's an estimate of how much we sleep depending on movement. They had accelerometer data. This and cohorts were available on 3,920 participants, a nice chunk of people, right, who took part in the Accelerometer sub-study at the 2012 wave. So remember how they checked in on these participants every 4 to 5 years? Well, in one wave, which lasts about 2 years, in the 2012 wave, when they checked in with everyone, almost 4,000 people also had accelerometer data. So they had objective data on sleep duration. And this is where we go back to this article and look at what they found. And this, honestly, when I was reading this article, up until this point, I was like, okay, this is same old, but here was something new. And there was just this one phrase, that this admission that was just shocking in a saddening way. And I think, let's see. Oh, here it is. Okay, so let's read this together. All right, so we had accelerometer data on 4,000 people, right? Out of these, 3,300 participants were free of multimorbidity and were included in the analysis, okay? And this is what they wanted. They wanted people who did not have multimorbidity at the baseline, right? And then they had a 6-year follow-up, and 601 out of these 3,368 actually did develop multimorbidity, all right? So now we have objective data to look at that takes care of that limitation, right? So what do? They say the correlation between accelerometer and questionnaire assessed sleep duration was moderate. It wasn't great, right? The correlation between people's estimate of how much they slept and the more objective data, which is not perfect, but generally speaking, accelerometer data is pretty close to EEG. That there was not a good correlation. So it just shows that people are not very good at guessing how much they sleep, right? And they share that. But then they say the following: the shape of the association between accelerometer assessed sleep duration and incident multimorbidity was similar to that observed with self-reported sleep duration, with the lowest risk of incident multimorbidity seen at 7 hours of sleep. So they say that the shape of these two measures, though, was still similar. And here's the thing. Listen to this. Given the small number of incident multimorbidity cases in participants in less than 6 hours and more than 6-hour categories, the focus here was on the shape of the association rather than the estimates of the associations. In other words, what the authors are saying, there weren't that many people who slept less than 6 hours who got multimorbidity. There weren't that many people in the above 8-hour group that got multimorbidity. So therefore, we're not going to estimate. We're not going to calculate the statistical significance when we have this objective data. Rather, we're just going to say that the curve kind of looks the same, and we're going to leave it there. And if it's not clear to you why I thought this was so heartbreaking, was that here you had it. You had the opportunity. You had objective sleep data that I'm very confident did not show any statistical significance. It didn't show any association between sleep duration and any risk of multimorbidity. You had the opportunity, and I just wrote this more for myself. You had the opportunity to reassure potentially millions of people out there. The headline of this study could be no association was found. No association was found between actual sleep duration and morbidity. And that could have been a huge relief for millions of people. We had that opportunity, but we didn't take it, which leads me to this constant question of what are we doing? What are we really doing? Like, what is our aim here? Are we trying to make people really scared and anxious, or are we trying to reassure people and make people have a more peaceful existence on this planet? And yes, I understand when you are in media, you need attention, you need eyeballs, you need to sell ads, you need to get, you need to make a living, right? I understand if you are in academia, you need people to fund your research, you need attention. But isn't there another way? Isn't there somehow a way where we can help each other and educate each other and reassure each other and still, make a living? Well, I believe there is such a way. I believe there's such a path, and I hope and I believe that things will get. We're humans. We'll figure everything out, including this. But anyway, I want to thank everybody who suggested this topic for Heard Online today, and really curious to hear your thoughts on this, and we shall go from there. Hope you'll have a really nice rest of your Tuesday, and see you soon. Bye for now.